Hi, I have with me Rishi Shah, partner and economist with Grant Thornton. Today, we will spend the next few minutes talking about the economic survey that just got presented today by Nirmala Sitharaman at both the houses of the parliament. My first question to you is that for the first time, the Economic Survey of India spends considerable amount of time and effort and thought on AI. And what do you think should be the Indian government's policy strategy when it comes to AI? Because the survey is very clear that AI is going to disrupt jobs.
So that's an interesting question, right? To start off with, because AI has been the talk of the town for some time now. On the policy front, I think the government can take a very agile approach wherein you don't need to regulate or deregulate. Essentially, practice a hands-off approach there. We need encouragement for the private sector to take on as much of development in the AI space as possible. Essentially, we may even need to develop our own large language models and essentially move in that direction, because you do not want to miss the bus on that one. The other aspect is you have the talent to actually go ahead and do it. So whatever kind of enabling role the government can take on, right, which is not to regulate the sector, let it evolve at its own pace while encouraging it. I think that has to be stance there, because that is what is going to bring about the change. And you need to use the prowess of the private sector to actually utilize its full potential.
While pondering on AI, the economic survey also says that the government has to very judiciously balance labor market, upskilling, and AI because the disruption of AI is very clear. Your thoughts?
I think absolutely the disruption will be there, but the good part is that you're going to get huge productivity gains. Productivity gains in an economy like India would also mean lesser amount of jobs. So that is where your consumption and the size of the economy comes into question. The idea is that we need to grow the full pie for everybody and ensure that people at the bottom sort of deciles, the income deciles, have the skills to actually cope and actually take advantage of this kind of boom that is there. There was a lot of fear in the early 90s when computers came in and all of that. The idea has to be to go along with this, because if our own population, the labor is not able to learn and evolve with this thing, we will get left behind, and then it'll be a much worse of situation than by. So again, the question is, how do we equip ourselves to manage this better rather than to regulate or deregulate? It's a hands-off approach that I'm advocating for, and essentially ensuring the fact that the labor needs to evolve and learn. So the government should look at skilling, government should look at upskilling the larger set of population, whether through colleges, through vocational skills, whatever it may be. But the larger set of people need to know what AI is all about and need to use them as much as possible,
Need
so
to be
that they
upskilled.
absolutely, that's the bottom line.
The economic survey also spends considerable time on talking about climate change, says that it's going to be the biggest impediment for India in its path of growth. Now, we've seen that the funds which were promised by developed nations are hard to come by. In such a situation, how can India cope?
It's an interesting chapter, to be very honest. And for the first time, you always talked about climate change. This time it talks about adaptation. That one, that change in one word gives you the complete story of what they're talking about. It's a reality we all have to live with.
But how will India manage to pay for the adaptation?
I think we need to now stop. We're a sufficiently large economy. We need to stop thinking about getting aid from abroad for those kind of processes or whatever. We, as people, as state governments, managing cities, especially on the coast, it's been a reality. Look at Kerala, look at all the other coastal areas which has actually borne the brunt of such intervention or interruptions in economic activity. We have to prepare for it. And the government has to prioritize climate adaptation methods, measures. It's not just at the national level. Then at the national level, you can be given a nudge. But state governments need to do much more, because they are majorly the ones who are, sort of getting affected. So we can't look towards the outside world to actually help us. Nobody looks at us as a lower middle income economy. All of that, Indians are perceived as one of the most brainy, strong people in the world right now. Fifth largest economy, we're going to be fourth. In that scenario, I think we have to cater for our own needs and come up with innovative solutions which actually ensure that your development path doesn't get disrupted by this. So it's about adaptation like this.
While efficiency is exaggerated to some extent.
Uh, it's like I said, innovative solutions developed in-house. That has to be the key. You can't look at the outside world to actually bring about this change.
Let's look at some macroeconomic numbers that the economic survey put forth. It's projecting India's growth at anywhere between 6.3 to 6.8% for FY26. However, in the same breath, the economic survey also says that India needs to grow at upwards of 8% for the next one decade to become a developed nation by 2047. How will we manage that?
That is a good question, and we last year, I mean, barely 6 months back, we had a projection of 6.5 to 7%. This time, it's slightly lower, from 6.3 to. It's a large enough wedge that the survey looks at. Fundamentally, what we need to do is increase the potential growth of the economy. The potential growth is the rate at which the economy can grow without generating inflationary pressures. How does that happen? It is through deregulation. It is through giving a chance for the private sector to expand at a fast clip. It is through bringing in policies, slightly, I'll be slightly more controversial on this one, but we need to encourage companies to grow bigger. We've always been trapped in the place wherein we've heard this complaint that MSMEs don't want to go beyond a particular sort of threshold. We need to tell people that if you go beyond that threshold, it's beneficial for you. Policies need to be tailored to that. So it's a complete opposite approach, and the only way you grow at 8+% when the global growth is going to be around 3% or there and thereabouts, you're not going to have a very favorable environment. Deglobalization is a fact of life that we have to live with. Again, the only way forward is inward and innovate yourself out of this kind of conundrum.
Since you mentioned deregulation, another aspect, another word that the economic survey has used quite a bit this time. The last real deregulation we saw was in the fuel sector. After that, we've not seen deregulation, so to say, also because certain Indian sectors like farm, like dairy, has very strong lobbies which has opposed it. So what does this economic survey really mean when it says deregulating sectors?
I think the survey very intelligently puts the ball in the court of the states. Yeah. So essentially what they're trying to say is we've done our part. And I can tell you for a fact that the Niti Aayog and all that, they're coming up with newer measures of, trying to help out the state governments, trying to tell them where to focus on. So recently they're doing a study on cost of doing business, essentially just to look at where is this unease coming from, right? If anybody were to do a ranking today, there will be certain states which would not be preferred while everybody would want to go to certain other states. The idea is that there is a lot that the states can do. It's on the factory floor, and there are some good examples in the survey when they talk about parking spaces. There's some weird sort of laws, the history of which even I'm not aware of, that you cannot take on manufacturing thing on a first floor or second floor. So there's just certain aspects that just need to be done away with. Larger point is that there has to be a change in behavior wherein our own corporates, whether it's MSMEs, SMEs, or the large corporates, they have to be seen as, prosperity generators rather than people who are trying to take something away from the economy. The rent-seeking behavior that is there in the economy at present in certain, capsules, I think that has to be done away with. And largely, like I said, that there is a lot that the states can do because it's not just on paper, it's in practice. There are certain states which have actually done much better than others, and that's why the survey actually nudges every state to look at each other while also look at what moves the needle in terms of investments abroad, right? What is it that you can do? There are certain things that are in your control, which is to do with processes, with restrictions, how good your administration is, how what kind of handholding do you do? All of that, the rule of law, how quickly can you settle certain disputes, all of that is within the state's ambit. And that's something that they should sort of focus on.
So it's more of ease of doing business than with perhaps deregulation.
Absolutely. So ease of doing business 2.0, as they mentioned, I think that they've really said that, we've done our part. We can give you a path forward. And I know for a fact that, again, the central plan sort of planning authority, which is the Niti Aayog, is coming up with newer methods of, something known as investor-friendly charter, and all those issues are there. But the point is, at best, the center can give some kind of a nudge. Right. And beyond that, the states have to do more. And it's a race, right? It's quite enlightening to know that 3 to 4 states in India have taken up the chunk of FDI in India since sort of the opening up, right? So you always have names like Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and some of those states. So Delhi also features in there. So you want this prosperity to be more broad-based. So just encouraging states so that even your smaller players are able to open up shop and make the most of this opportunity that the Indian economy presents.
My final question to you, the economic survey talks about unemployment, says the rate has been around 3.2% in the last financial year. At the same time, there are other data sets that come to us where we see that yes, unemployment is on the wane because rural jobs have gone up and self-employment is on the rise. Now, for India to be a developed nation by 2047, ruralization and self-employment being on the rise has never boded very well for any developed nation. Your thoughts on that?
See, it's a tricky scenario. I mean, the unemployment rates, the way they're presented, the way they're carried out, it's a 3.2%. There is a definitional aspect to it. Wherein you go ahead, you ask people, have you been working? Have you been seeking work? Our unemployment rates have historically been in this region. So they're not directly comparable to a developed economy of, say, what the US does, wherein on a monthly basis, they will come out with those job numbers and, you know, how the economy is behaving. I think we need more introspection into these areas, definitely. And there has to be a focus on, again, pushing people to invest and grow businesses. I think that remains the key, right? Employment generation, the right kind of employment generation, the signals will be generated by the market, and the central government and the state governments should play an enabling role there, wherein you just provide an open field for people to take advantage of the economic opportunity that is there. Employment should recover from there, those, you know. And on the other side, when you talk about urban versus rural expenditure, yes, the growth has come down. I understand that, but that's also because some of it was planned. Some of it is engineered with the RBI putting on more restrictions for lending and, on unsecured loans. So some of this was expected. The idea in any kind of economic data is, let's look at it a slightly longer term. Let's give it another 6 months to a year. Let's see if this continues to go down. Definitely there is something to be done there. I think urban consumption should revive a bit with government expenditure going on, and the budget hopefully will do something more to push it along. Yeah.
It was a pleasure talking to you, Mr. Shah. Thank you very much for your time.